What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lamson, and this one is about to go down. I am joined with Weston Johnson. He is an F-15 crew chief, and he is on his journey to becoming an officer in the Air Force as well, which is super exciting. Because in the recent series of the show, I've been interviewing more of like the future of the military, some younger generation airmen, and it only gets better in this episode. What I love about Weston is some of the things we talk about is what he saw in his mentors in the military. So a few of those being some F-15 pilots that showed him the path to building relationships, being humble, being approachable, all those things that we've been talking about so far. He saw it in them and he wanted to continue that journey. We also talk about his journey going from active duty to the reserves, going to college, doing ROTC, and hopefully getting ready to become an officer here soon. He goes through some of the traits we talk about a lot as a leader: self-doubt, one more day, trying new things, staying humble, leading by example, being selfish, getting uncomfortable. Let's see, what else do we talk about? The fear of failure. All the things that we have mentioned so far, he has already built them, established them, and applying them to his life. So like I say every episode, if you find any use in this, if you've learned anything, if you were motivated from it, feel free to share it, save it, like it, leave a comment, provide me some feedback. The best way to reach out to me is Instagram, Manny Mustache right there. We keep it pretty simple. Let me know if you want to hear anything else or if you want to join the show or chat too. I'm always looking for people to build leadership traits from and see what else everybody's doing. And like I said, thank you. Keep it up. And enjoy the episode. What is up, everyone? Thanks for jumping in on another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. Just like I mentioned in the intro, I got my boy Weston on with me. And we're going to dive into a little bit later on how we virtually met. But again, if you're listening, we have a semi-formal script that I'll go over. I'll ask him the 3 H's, just like I do in every episode, because it's a great way to get the juices flowing, get to know each other if we haven't talked a lot in person. So we'll hit those. And then if we have to, we'll dive into my leadership philosophy on any questions he has, any feedback, or why I chose those 4 statements. Then we will dive into some leadership traits, which always gets the juices going because it's just good to hear from other people's perspective on, I didn't know about that one. And then sometimes I'll add my own leadership traits that they may throw at me as well, which I do almost on every episode. I'm like, and Weston, you've seen the email, it's almost like 30 traits long right now. And I have a notebook where I just keep adding them to them, where I learned them, and I'll write like a short paragraph with them as well. Then we'll follow it up with a book recommendation. Weston has one, I have one, and then that'll be the end of it. So with that being said, without further ado, Weston, my man, let's get into the 3 H's. The first one, as most people know, is hometown background, sort of like, where you from? Have you moved around? What do you got?
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. First of all, I grew up in a small town in Nebraska called Battle Creek. Grew up around a family farm, working my whole life. That's all I knew before I joined the military. I enlisted in 2018, right out of high school, and ended up being an F-15 Strike Eagle crew chief in North Carolina, which is where I've been for the past about 6 years.
Nice. All right. 2018, man, that's crazy. Obviously, I enlisted in 2006. So, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for those of you listening, and even Weston, the reason I love bringing younger people on the podcast, where it's not like your normal like Jocko or those people where they bring in like retired Navy SEALs, right? That have like tons of experience killing bad guys that do cool, like just crazy stuff. I want to bring in the newer generation and sort of that middle tier where I'm at. See where our leadership techniques and tactics come from, what we've learned, how we're adapting to like this new future generation of airmen. And you've probably heard it a lot where you're at in your career with your supervisors of this like new generation, right? Like always asking why people, and that's what we're going to talk about because I love it. I like being in the middle of this leadership tier of the military where I sort of grew up with the do as you're told, not as do as you're told. Don't ask why sort of mentality. And then I've progressed into a flight commander where I tried to enforce that, but I kept getting asked by my airmen, like, why? And so I had to shift and be like, okay, I can't just like do this anymore. I need to provide the whys, or let them ask, why am I doing it like this? It may take a little bit longer, but the solution and problem will still get taken care of. So that would be great to talk about as well.
100%.
And then obviously you're rocking with the F-15 crew, right? So you get to see the pilot and Wizzo side of it. Obviously for me being on a platform that has both, it's always really cool. Being a Wizzo myself, we're sort of that, stepchild of a flying community, but it's cool in the B1 community because we sort of just tell people we fly the B1 when we meet new people. We're not as direct, like I'm a Wizzo, I'm a pilot. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard in the F-15 they're pretty clear on like, I'm a pilot, right? Or I'm a Wizzo. I only know a few Wizzos from my training that are in that F-15 community. One of them is, I think her name's Alex Deer, a good friend of mine.
Okay.
I just follow her throughout, but that's what I've heard sort of on that side of the house. They're pretty like, there's like that, a little line, like a line between the two, but
yeah, there's a little bit of like a pride, like, obviously you want to tell everybody you're a pilot, or the Wizzo, they're doing all the work in the backseat, actually, putting the bombs on target. So they want to, let people know that, but they're pretty cool. I just classify them as air crew in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're 100% right. That's cool.
Nice. Cool. All right. What do you got for some heroes?
All right. So, I put my heroes are also my mentors. So, my older brother has always been a hero to me. He enlisted in 2012. So he's been in about 12 years now. He was on 22's maintenance side, and then he transferred over to the Guard, got his degree, and now he's waiting to go to OTS to get his pilot slot.
I think we talked about this a little bit, right? I think you probably mentioned it to me as well. So
Yep. So he's always been a super down to earth, humble guy that always does the right thing, and that's kind of what I aspire to be. Is be that constant, be that kind of steady person. So that's why, he's always doing the things right. So that's why he's not only my mentor, he's my brother, but he's also one of my heroes. And then I have two F-15 pilots that I consider heroes, mentors. One is his call sign's Crud. He's now on F-35s out in Arizona. But when I was a very, very young airman, he was probably the first pilot to ever talk to me and, ask me about what I wanted to do. And that kind of started my steps of becoming an officer and chasing my dreams of, being that leader and being a, air crew and getting to that spot. And then next one's a lieutenant colonel pilot. His name's call sign's Ripper. And he's the kind of like, colonel, that commander range, where he'll see an A1C or senior. I'm going to go give him a hug or whatever if he knows them personally. He'll talk to you like you're a person, and ask you about your family, stuff like that. Super down to earth, humble guy as well. All three of them, which is really what I kind of want to do as well as I progress through my leadership career. And as you know, I'm in ROTC with being in the reserves now, and I'm sure we'll dive into that. But that's kind of where I want to build to be at, to be that steady, leading by example, being a legit dude to everybody, not, wearing that rank above everybody else.
That's cool to hear, man. And that's what the B1, we don't have that relationship per se with our airmen and maintenance, which is tough because I think in your guys' community, you guys work on, is it a specific aircraft? I don't know if you guys are assigned a tail, or I know there's so many of them.
Yeah.
But how's that work for you on your side being a crew chief?
So we have specific tails that we're assigned, with our names on the side of them and whatnot. And we do get to work on those aircraft. However, it's usually bouncing around. So as an airman, you're, assigned to whatever flyer you're on for that day. You go out and crew that jet, and you meet the air crew every day. So they go up, you pre-flight the jet. Pre-flight the jet, get the air crew in the seat when they step. Talk to them a little bit. And a lot of people are scared to talk to the air crew. A lot of the airmen are just, hey, good morning, sir. But I'll ask them what they're doing for the day. They'll show me their charts or whatever. They'll kind of tell me about what they're going to do, talk to them on comm when we're running up. And then as you progress, as a seasoned senior airman, and then when you put on staff sergeant, you're more floating around, helping out airmen, red balls and all the sorts of different things that happen on goes. But yeah, I became really close to a lot of the air crew just by talking to them, just taking 5 minutes out of my day and having a conversation with them before they fly and or after they get down, and you'd be amazed how much that 5 minutes just builds and builds and builds, and next thing you know, you have a relationship with somebody.
That's great to hear, because on our side, obviously being prior enlisted, I already wanted to build that connection with the maintenance crew or the crew chief when I would go out to the B1.
Right.
Well, I've seen a lot of officers almost be nervous to tell you guys what they're doing because they don't think, their mentality is, well, I don't want to interrupt them. What if, they're on a tight schedule, or what if they got things to do? What if I don't, what if it's confusing? But it's good to hear from you, like, hey, we want to build that connection as well. Some flyers almost think they're like pressured to tell you guys what we're doing on our mission. And
right.
Unfortunately, I've seen it in the B1 where I've had commanders tell us as flyers, like, hey guys, don't forget to go tell the maintenance crew or the AFE people when you step what you're doing today, so they can feel part of the mission. And I'm like, the way you say that, like, what? Are we not allowed to talk to them or something? So
right.
For you to bring up that relationship is there. It's not just one-sided, like, if either one of you open the door, it'll stay open and that communication will flow.
For sure.
That's one thing we try to, for people listening, starting a jet isn't just like pushing a button, you take off. It's not that fast. It takes, now in the B1, it takes us 2 hours almost to get off the ground. So we have a long time with our maintenance guy connected to the jet on the ground. And so because they have to come up on the jet sometimes for problems, go back down, and we're talking to him on the side if we have system checks. And so it's a good time to build communications. And there's definitely dead time in there when we're asking him, like, hey dude, what do you got planned this weekend? Or like,
exactly.
what's, and sometimes if I know him, I'll ask him, like, hey dude, what's up? Because as Wizzos, I have more time to talk in the back than the pilots who are going through all their button hits and stuff. So usually sometimes for me in the back, I'll just randomly throw out there, like, hey dude, like, have you seen this movie? Or like, I don't know, like,
yep.
What are you doing this weekend?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's cool to hear. Yeah. Just to let you guys know in that are listening that may not be military, or how that crew chief air crew relationship is built. It's built in those short 5 to 10 minutes of conversation. And it builds, like you said, throughout flying, 3 or 4 years there, where it's not all built in one setting. It just compounds up over and over again. And like you said, you get to know the call sign of the person. You'll get to know sort of their life. And then I don't know if you've deployed with like because you guys all deploy sort of together, right, too?
Yeah, we do. So I never got to deploy with 15s. I've had about 3 opportunities where they kind of kicked me off, but which kind of is too bad. But I got to send a lot of dudes out the door. Everybody does deploy together.
Yeah.
You'll send all your crew chiefs, your E&E, your avionics, electrics, and then your air crew, obviously. I've done a lot of other cool stuff outside. It's kind of weird. I've got to do like different contingency exercises with like PJs and TAC-Ps, and did some with British Spec Ops one time. They threw me in the back of a Chinook, zip tied me in the middle of the night. It's crazy. But I've done more cool stuff on that side than I have with 15s. I've been home stationed, turning jets and making sorties.
Nice. That's cool. Those are some good mentors and role models, man. Family is always a great one. My brother was my sort of mentor when I was going to college, so our story is pretty crazy. I was 2 years older I am 2 years older than him. So I went to college, or not to college. I went straight into the military in 2006. In 2008, he went to college to play football. So I had 2 more years left in my 4-year enlistment. So he started playing college football. I had 2 years left. So I was sort of the younger brother in that aspect when it came to college. And so
Right.
He was already in college playing football. And I was like, man, I want to do that, like, how do I do that? And that just gets me on my crazy story of like how I got into ROTC, how I got into football, why I wanted to go be a walk-on was because he was sort of my older brother there. I was watching him play college football, and I tried to go to his college and play with him because it would have been a pretty cool little finale for us to play football again together. Because he played with me my senior year in high school when he was a sophomore. He got moved up to play a little bit, so that was pretty cool. But crazy story there with family. When I was enlisted, though, I didn't have a lot of officer mentors because being a SEER guy at Fairchild, we never saw any. Like, I look back at those days, I saw outside of teaching in our squadron flight room, I saw 2. And the only time I ever saw an officer was when I was in trouble. And I had to go to the commander's office because I missed a GTC payment. And I didn't know you get in trouble for that stuff. And he was like, you got to pay your bill. And I'm like, yes, sir.
Yep.
That was it. Other than that, we didn't have flight commanders that were officers in SEER. You just have a flight chief. And then you had like a Crow or Stowe or somebody that was, I think, our flight commander. Now that I look back at it, but they were just never there. We had our own little floor of this old ass building where it was all just our flights, and we just rotated in the woods. And that was the only other time I saw officers was when I was teaching. But obviously, I was an instructor; they were a student. I didn't have a lot of time to get to know them because I'm just focused on getting through all these lessons day. I probably could have done the small thing like you and been like, "Hey, sir, what's this?" But I didn't know where I was going then either in my life, so
Right.
I wasn't reaching out to officers as a mentor until I guess I commissioned. I don't know, but that's cool. I like that. And then I like how you talked about the humble, building relationships, right? That's a huge key trait of mine. I love how you talk about those gentlemen taking the time just to get to know you as like a human being, Unfortunately for people listening, it's hard to say that this happens a lot in the military where like you're praised for treating people like a human when you should be doing it all the time. But sometimes we just get caught up in like the day in of our job of like, especially as a flyer, when you're going to the jet, you're going to fly. You may not appreciate the airmen working on the jet. And so you're just like, hey, fix my jet, like almost like they are part of the jet as like a system and you're just the human flyer. And so we do have to emphasize to some pilots, hey, you have a guy on the ground that's going through the same thing as you. Like, get to know him. He'll probably work harder for you if you ask him his name, or like, I know it's cold out there. Don't get in your seat and be like, oh man, my seat's cold while it's like 30 degrees outside and this guy's in a crappy uniform trying to stay warm.
Yeah, he's been out there all night.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Cool. All right. Obviously, the throw ball question I had for the third H is hardships. Like, what do you got? If there's,
So I've been very blessed throughout my life with a good family, good parents, supportive, friends. My parents brought me up right. I've never had really crazy financial hardships or, things like that happen in my life, which has been very good and bad, So,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciated it, everything. But, the biggest hardships I've had are probably breakups. And then the periods of, when you're going through, when you're working to get that, my degree, or when you're working to get that, next stripe or trying to commission, those periods of self-doubt and where you might fail at something and you ask yourself why you're doing this. And then that can last for a while until you can crawl yourself out of that hole. So I would say those two things are probably the biggest kind of hardships that I've gone through in recent years in my military career, which taught me a lot, actually. It's funny because, you think, a breakup or whatever, or self-doubt, depression, whatever it may be. It kind of teaches you it taught me how to kind of just one more day, keep grinding, maintain where you're at and just one more day. And eventually it's amazing how you just crawl yourself right out of that hole. And you try new things, you get in the gym a little bit more. It's funny because I do, you mentioned Jocko earlier. I do watch Jocko a lot, and one of his podcasts, he just says good, all the time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If the girlfriend breaks up with you, good, more time for yourself to get better. And I'm like, yep. I try to have that mindset. I'm not quite as hard as Jocko, but we can all wish.
No, dude, that was perfect, and I wanted you to keep talking, so that was good. That's why I was like, let's see where he goes with this, And you brought up some really good points that I wrote down. And I grew up, man, we have a lot of similarities. When I enlisted, I figured out when I enlisted, I grew up in a bubble. Like, I was a bubble kid my whole life, man. I grew up in a small town in Northern California. I had very good family, like my parents moved down here with us. They're still together. I had a really good relationship with my brother, really close to my immediate family.
Yep.
I never swore. I never drank when I was in high school. Went to church on Sunday. Played sports. All four. I got in the military, and my dad. I remember my dad telling me, he's like, "Hey, son, you're probably gonna start doing things that are just like different, right? Like doing all this stuff." He's like, "Just have control and do that." Man, that didn't last too long.
You went crazy.
When I got in the military, man, like I didn't know. Like, I moved to Spokane, and that was the biggest city I lived in. And Spokane was only like 200,000. It's still not that big.
Yeah.
I got to Spokane, and I was like seeing buildings that were like 3 stories tall. I was just like, whoa. And then I was like seeing like nightlife, like going to bars, and I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. And I was the youngest on our team, so I was always like the son to some of the guys that were on my team who were like 30-something years old, cross training, already went to college. So they treated me like their kid. There would be plenty of times I'd go to my buddy's house who were married on base. We would be drinking, and they'd like give me these conversations like the dad would have with their son. It's adorable. And,
Yep.
I started realizing it about 2 or 3 years in. Like, I grew up in a bubble.
Yes.
And so, like, very similar to you, like, I didn't have those hardships, but I started going through the things that probably a lot of people were going through in high school, that were making me self-doubt. Like, obviously trying to get out of the military and become an officer. Very similar, just being like, I don't know what to do. Am I doing this right? So not really a hardship, but just new.
Yeah.
And
Change.
not knowing which way to go. And that can be hard. Especially, I think now it's harder because back then when I was doing it, social media wasn't as big. So there wasn't a lot of pressure there. Like now with social media, especially when you're saying you're going to do things and it's not on the right path and people are like watching you, there's all these eyes on social media and you're like, oh man, am I doing the right thing? What's going to happen if I fail? Is everybody going to look at me like that? Like it's hard.
100%.
Yeah. And obviously with me trying to cross train right now, I'm sort of going through the same thing again. And so it took me almost a year to physically say I'm cross training. Like I hit it through a lot of my deployment last year. I only talked to like my wife and close people. Like I didn't tell a lot of B1 people. I think I only told my commander a couple times, but I was just like nervous and it made me like stress out a lot more of these little things that I tell a lot of people not to stress out about. I got back from my deployment. Once I started doing the application and the phase for TACPO, I was like, all right, I need to eventually just go all in. And like anybody I talk to, they need to know where my head's at. And so the past few months is when I've really been like on my social media, like I think I put like a couple months ago, like, hey, I'm cross training to TACPO, like during the deployment, there were probably hints, with me working out, doing a lot of crazy stuff. But some people are probably just like, oh, that's just Manny on a deployment, it's like doing a bunch of weird shit. But when I got back is when I was like officially like, hey, I got 3 weeks till selection, like, and then people were like, oh, okay. And, but yeah, definitely right up there where you were like, hey, because it's different for us, you're doing a different route too, getting out, doing ROTC, and we'll talk about that as well. And where there's nobody really to talk to that's done it. So you're just like, am I doing the right thing? Where do I go from here?
Yeah. Definitely. There's a different world. There's more and more every year and every, as it goes on, but yeah, it's definitely not heard of as much. Yeah.
Let's jump into one of the questions I had that you sort of already brought up is, oh yeah, your reason to commission, right? So you're doing a non-standard route of commission, I would say, in the Air Force. So let's talk about that a little bit. You've already talked about some of the mentors that opened up the path to becoming an officer or just what the officer life is like. But talk about maybe some of the things you saw that were different that maybe threw you off, and then this transition period and where you're going from here. Because it'd be cool for some people to hear, hey, this is how I can become an officer. Because that was one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, was to share with people on the path to become an officer. It's not always just OTS. There's other ways, and you're doing one that I did that's harder, but you have to catch it in line with your career, and that can be pretty stressful too. So let's see what you got on
that. So like I said, I enlisted in 2018. Did my first 4-year contract. I never thought when I graduated high school, I was a B student at best. I didn't care about school. I wasn't very good at school. I didn't think college. I always wanted to be. I fell in love with aviation at a really young age. Loved airplanes. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I was going to enlist in the Air Force. I never had to question what I wanted to do, which was kind of a awesome thing. A lot of people do. But when the first enlistment, I would, crew these jets and put these jets in the air, but I would always see these pilots coming out and doing the mission, getting off the ground, and super fulfilling, putting that aircraft in the air and providing them with a safe, reliable aircraft. However, there's always that pang as I want to be in the seat of that thing too, And when I got my incentive flight in the backseat of 15, it gave me the bug. Like, yeah, this is what I want to do, right? So I talked to the officers I mentioned above or before, those mentors and heroes, and they kind of they guided me and gave me the inspiration and the kind of the motivation to chase it. So when I ended my my 4-year contract, I re-enlisted, did a PALS front, which is a seamless transition from your contract to the reserves.
Okay.
I moved one hangar over. Same base, same flight line, same jets, a lot of the same people, and just as a reservist now. So as of right now, I'm a full-time reservist. So I'm a traditional reservist on active duty status, and I'm doing 16 credit hours a semester on top of that in flight training. And so I kind of, there's OTS, there's the academy, and there's ROTC, the commission. So I chose the ROTC route because the academy, I didn't want to do 5 years with a prep school, and then 4 years of school. I already had a bunch of credit hours knocked out, and OTS is very hard to get into. So I was like, I'm gonna hit up the ROTC route. I'm gonna go to college in person and learn, get a degree and chase my dreams of becoming an officer and hopefully air crew, a pilot slot or a WISO slot. So that was kind of like how I went about it. So, and right now I'm right in the middle of it. So I'm a junior now in college. I'm about to go up for the rated board or job selection board in about 7 days.
Spring semester. Yeah, I do remember that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, those dudes inspired me to not only, when it's cool when you see an officer come out and be personable and talk to people, even if I don't get a rated slot, being that guy that can come into the workplace and, bring everybody food, go talk, like actually be able to, as a prior enlisted, be able to talk to them and understand what they're going through is huge. I think I always had that feeling like I was meant for more. Like I can turn wrenches all day. I love being on airplanes, but that I can do more in the military. I can provide people with more than just, putting a jet in the air. And that's kind of what drove me. Obviously, just aviation. I love aviation. I want to fly.
Nice. So then you already went through enrollment allocation, I assume, right? Since you're going to okay, perfect, cool. Let's talk about being a prior enlisted guy in ROTC, right? So I've done it. I did it. I was not the best. I'll admit that as a prior enlisted officer going through ROTC, I didn't do anything in ROTC till like my junior year. My first 2 years, so I did the 4-year college route. Are you doing 4 or did you do the 250 route? Oh, 3. Okay. Yep, cool. So for those listening, like he said, ROTC is another route to become an officer in all branches. It's where you go to college and you enroll in a class based on that branch, and then you do some labs throughout the year. And then after your sophomore year or your second year, you have to go through an enrollment allocation, which is like a selection. You get racked and stacked with everybody else in the world or the U.S. that's going through ROTC. Once you get through that, you go to field training, which you probably did last year, right? Or are you going through this summer?
I did. Last summer I went. Yep.
Yeah. You go through field training, which is like basic training for officers, a little bit more than OTS because you do a little bit more. They still do Camp Shelby, right?
They changed it. It's called Vigilant Warrior now. It's in a different area, but it's similar. Yeah. Yep. Go out in the middle of nowhere and you run through small
like the deployment life.
Yeah, deployment life, and yeah.
Okay, yep. So you do that, and after your sophomore year, going to your junior year, then your junior, senior year, sort of like the leaders in ROTC. You're doing more leadership tasks and focus. Okay, so my story really quick is I was playing football during ROTC as well, and a reservist like you. So I remember talking to my commander and being like, "Hey, sir, like I got this thing called football, like a sports thing over here," and they had no idea. Like ROTC, if you're listening, are not very athletic people. And so I remember my commander just being like super scared. I was literally, he's like, "I don't want you to get hurt, not like make it." And I'm like, "Sir, I'll be fine. Like, I'm just going to go play football." And so my freshman, sophomore year, all I did is work out, do football. All I did for ROTC is I went to my class, which was like one day a week or 2. Yep. I barely went to labs because those I'd practice on Thursdays. And so I didn't do much my freshman, sophomore year. I remember getting my enrollment allocation. One of my buddies, Garrett Cross, he's still in the military now. I come back like my junior year and he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've been here for like 2 years, but I'm in the ROTC. I just have a different degree. Unlike, aeronautical engineer, I'm a kinesiology guy, so I don't have homework and I don't sit here all day in the ROTC lab."
Yeah.
But then that's when I sort of was like, I need to sit back because I got back then we called it the top 10 of the field training. So me and my buddy We both, I can't remember what they called it, but it was like DG sort of.
Yep.
So we got that. And that's when I was sort of like, okay, I need to start stepping it up a little. Came back. I was the field training flight commander for my junior year for the sophomores. I went back to Camp Shelby.
That's what I am right now.
Okay, yep. And then I was a CTA instructor when I went back the next year and taught combatives. So I went down that route. And then what did I do my senior year? I think my senior year, is that when I was FTA? Maybe that's when I was FTA. I don't know. But anyways, I definitely gave back a little bit more. So talk about that. How is that going through college, right? Already being in the military for a little bit. What are some things you've seen? Has it helped you become a better leader? What have you noticed?
It's been the most humbling experience of my life. I think, coming in, I go to work and, I'm an NCO and I'm responsible for 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that are airmen. I go to ROTC and I'm getting yelled at 18, 19, 20-year-olds on how to march when I'm already been in, whatever I've already been in. So it's a very humbling experience, which is in the grand scheme of things very good, because being that humble, down to earth kind of leader and being that constant, I needed that. I made staff really young. I was some young hot shot staff, thought I was, and I needed that, so it's been a very humbling experience. It's actually taught me a lot, that more than I thought it would. I thought ROTC was going to be this kind of cake thing, and there's aspects of it that are questionable, still, but it's been really, really positive. It's been a positive experience. I have great instructors. I have great cadre, and they've been really good to me. They've been really understanding with TDYs or work, stuff like that. ROTC has kind of instilled as an NCO, we're more like, managing and making the mission happen. And as an officer, you're still managing and making the mission happen, but you're also taking care of people at a higher level. And there's usually more people that you're taking care of. It's kind of you have more breadth as an officer than you do as an NCO. And learning that and looking at different leadership, traits and different leadership styles that people have, and kind of finding your own and finding your niche a little bit has been very, very helpful to me in my ROTC career. Hopefully carries on into the Air Force when I go back active duty after.
Nice. That's cool. I like that, man. It's good to hear. I got a couple more questions. We'll throw them out.
Hit me.
So this is a pet peeve of mine with the Air Force. Sorry, Air Force, but the Air Force does not do a good job teaching leadership skills to our people, officers and airmen, compared to the other branches like the Marines and the Army, where leadership ethos and techniques and styles are taught at a very young age in those people's career, and they're given more opportunity to lead people. The Air Force, they teach us primarily how to do a job, right?
Yep.
Individually, how to do a job, do tasks, and progress through that. What has the Air Force taught you in leadership? Did you notice it at the time when you were being taught it? Because I don't realize it until I look back, which, that's like my Monday morning quarterback of like, let me look back at my enlisted days. Oh, this was something they were teaching me, but I didn't know back then. Is there anything you went through the past few years where it felt like the Air Force was teaching you, or you had to like get through it all and then look back and be like, oh, they were trying to teach me something, but they just didn't really like teach me?
I would say I've had NCOs or specific people do that to me where I'm like, they might be, making me do a job or making me do a certain thing that I don't want to do. But looking back, hindsight, like, okay, that taught me a lot. Now I know how to set up this, event, or now I know how to, do this job with this many people and kind of figure out whatever it needs to do. I wouldn't say the Air Force as an institution, because ALS is the only thing I really went through that's leadership,
Mm-hmm.
And
same as with officers, we go through SOS, but it's not like a leadership course; it's more of a networking course,
right? Yeah, exactly. So I've had really good NCOs that are the type of leaders that I want to become. And you talk a lot about leading by example, and that's one of my huge things is leading from the front, leading by example. So I've had many NCOs do that, which those dudes I'd I'd give my life for them. I'd work, 16-hour days just because they're out there doing it with me and not just, giving directives and, sitting in the truck or whatever it may be. So I would say there are things that looking back that have taught me some leadership skills, but I know that when I become an officer, there's going to be many more to come.
All right, next one. What do you look for in a leader? You've already mentioned a few of them, which is great. So if there's anything extra, you can add it. But you've talked about humble, building relationships from what you've seen. But early in your career, did you know what you're looking for in leaders, or were you more just like doing the job? And now that you're going through ROTC, you're getting this perspective. Now you should be realizing when you work with people what you're looking for. So, for instance, when I became an officer, when I was enlisted, I wasn't looking for leadership traits, right, in people. I was sort of just doing what I was told. And like, I wasn't looking up to somebody and being like, that's not how I would lead or how I would do this. Once I became a lieutenant and captain is when I started looking at other officers going, that's a trait I like, that's the one I don't. So how has that evolved throughout your career? Or have you noticed it yet, or are you still getting used to it?
I definitely noticed it. Well, initially, you come in as, young airman, 3 level, just trying to figure out what a jet even is, let alone, fix it. And you're so focused on the job and being told, learning and doing your thing. But as you kind of get more comfortable with your job, you start noticing things outside of the scope of just your job. And that's where I started noticing different leaders and different leadership styles. As like the humbleness and because there's a lot of times where I'm not too prideful to to say this. I'm not always the most humble guy, and I know that about myself. I know I can be very extroverted, but it's kind of ironic. The guys that I look up to the most are humble, down to earth, and more reserved, and I'm kind of the opposite. So I'm trying to use my strengths. So I can do like a mix of that because I want to be humble and down to earth, but I want to be energetic.
Yep.
And also, positive and full of energy for my people as well. So I'm trying to find that balance, be there when I'm needed, and when I'm not needed, know my place and know my time, when to be there, when to step in, when to do the things, when to do the right things, when to not, when to know when I'm a nuisance, But yeah, I noticed that, early on, probably around my 2 to 3 year mark in the Air Force. And then that's just progressed. I've been in with reserve time. I've been in almost 6 years now. I think we talked about that. And yeah, as I progress, I just see more and more people that have different leadership styles. And I kind of just put them all in my brain, and I'll take little aspects from people and that I want to apply to myself. Like, okay, he's got his time management figured out. I need to have that figured out. He goes and sees his people, talks to his people, takes care of his people. That's one of the primary things of being a leader, in my opinion. I'm going to take that. Prioritize and execute, prioritize what you have and then execute it and make things happen.
Nice. I love it. That's good. That's really good. The prioritize and execute.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add on to your down there for the leadership deals. I was going to say prioritize and execute. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, well, I'll hit that, follow that one up. Another random one. Obviously, I'm huge on social media. How did you find my social media? Because I'm always curious, because I'll get random people that will reach out to me. But because for those listening, my social media on TikTok is primarily focused on leadership stuff, is what I intend to focus on there. I don't go down the rabbit hole of posting to get views or content of like random reels or GIFs, which, could get me a lot of views. But I've tried to stick to my guns, very leadership, Air Force, military focused. What did you see? Just like feedback for me as well. But, and then, obviously that's how our relationship developed. And then we talked a lot throughout, but yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if I remember exactly. I think I saw one of your TikTok videos. I probably commented on it. I might have DM'd you or something. And I think maybe you just talked about being prior enlisted in a video or something like that. And then we knew there was an AFE guy that used to work with you at DM that we both knew. What was his name?
Oh,
was it Dick Austin?
No, there's a Johns, and then there is a Dick's. What was his first name? Can't remember his name, but I thought Austin. I know Austin. I thought went up there. There was a couple people, but Dick's was one of them, though.
I think so. Anyways, we talked about it, and he's like, oh my, he's like, you know him? Like, yeah, I met him on TikTok or whatever, and that kind of started it off. And then I know we chatted a couple times on the phone, probably a couple of years ago now, and then or a year ago or so, probably.
Yeah.
And then just comment on each other's videos and just supporting each other from afar. We texted a couple times about meeting up, and hopefully we still get to do that sometime. Life happens, life's a wild thing. But initially I was drawn to an officer being on social media that is not only prior enlisted, but is also preaching, leadership and showing, the officer side of things that most people don't get to see.
Yeah.
So that's probably what really drew me to it and kind of to you. And then watching your journey from, you were all about fitness and books and leadership. And then I see you start a podcast, and then more books and more working out and, workout stuff and, cross training stuff, and watching that progress through is really cool. And being able to be a part of that is awesome.
Yeah. And that's what's cool. That's what I love about it is, and I think one of the ones I just always love and I almost do them every few months. I'll just get on my TikTok and be like, if you are enlisted, you should be thinking of commissioning, and that one always gets a lot of good feedback and stuff. And,
yep.
And then I always try to say, like, the reason I say that, and I'll throw in like, hey, here's what I did. I was prior enlisted. I did ROTC, and then I'll get more questions. But yeah, so it's always cool. And I just love that that's how our connection started and where it's evolved, like, so for people out there listening, like, that's why I love social media. And a lot of people will, and I've said this on other podcasts as well, social media it's a great tool. And I love it because we get to literally control what we see on social media. So whenever I hear people say like, oh, it's bad, it's got all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, you literally can block or unfollow or do whatever you want to, filter it however. So you use it to your advantage. So when people aren't using social media, that is a leadership tool. I've seen a lot more leaders on social media, which is cool to see. Just come out there and preach their story and give tips and tricks. And so it's good to see it grow. And I think it's past like 3 years, I think it's grown substantially in the military. I know TikTok is huge in the military.
It is.
So it's always good to see more people jump out on there.
Yeah. So I just ran through some old DMs between us on my phone here, and it looks like we talked on Instagram a little bit about commissioning. And I was actually, before I even started ROTC back in 2022, before I started college and stuff, I was asking you a question about going ROTC and if you think I can do it. And that's so cool to look back at that.
Yeah, because I remember those discussions of you doing ROTC and trying to figure that out. And yeah, because I think we were talking about like South Carolina or colleges like that, right?
Yeah, yep. Now we're doing the dang thing. That's so cool. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's why I love it, because I guess I've been on long enough where I've had people reach out to me and they're almost done with that process. Like I had another airman at Barksdale, a B-52. I think she was an intel or maintenance, but she just messaged me and was like, hey, I'm getting ready to go through OTS, become an intel officer. And so I look back and we got to know each other when, they saw the video. So the years have gone by where I'm starting to see you guys, or your generation move through to become an officer. So,
which is awesome. I mean, that's got to be fulfilling and in itself, And
because I think I saw a Mandatory Fund post a picture of him meeting a guy that he talked to on social media about commissioning in the person, and then they met, and I was like, oh man, like that's like on my vision board one day. It's like like we've talked about with the captain bars and stuff like that, like in person, like like seeing it all come full circle. So
that'd be really cool. Well, my commission will
keep me
come on down.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
All right, let's talk a couple more leadership traits here. Obviously, you already mentioned my first one for my philosophy: lead by example in all we do. And we don't have to cover that much because you've already talked about some of the areas to do that. Talking to people, building relationships, doing that. The second one, be selfish before you can be selfless. I don't know if I have it backwards, but talk about that one. What do you think when you hear it? Have you seen it? How does it apply? Because it's usually one where I talked to a previous chief of mine. He gave me good feedback. We're like, hey, selfish is a tough word to throw out there because people may just soak it all in and that's all they hear, right, in a talk. But like what do you hear? What do you think?
So initially, when I think about that, to be selfless, you have to be selfish, and that makes sense to me because if you aren't taking care of yourself and putting your priorities and your affairs in order, then you cannot be selfless and help other people in that way. So if you're not, working out or having your finances in line or your family life put together and being selfish and putting those things truly first, then you can't be selfless when you're trying to help other people, and because you have other things in the back of your mind. So that's what initially comes to my mind right away is, families first, always. Your finances, your health, all that stuff. Be selfish in those aspects. Don't ever cheat out those things. And then if you do all those things, then you can be selfless and give back even more to the other people.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if it's just the Air Force in general, but when we're young airmen, they really push, the job first. And I think that's why a lot of people just get so burnt out and crumbled because they're not focusing on those little things early in their career. They usually catch it when they're struggling, which is unfortunate, like that's when we sort of become selfish is when we're like, I fall to pieces, like, hey, Air Force, give me a break here, like it would have been nice if you told me this earlier in my career, but you wanted me to go through 3-level and 5-level and do CCAF and then do all this stuff. And then you're like, hey, go get in shape. And I'm like, bro, I could have been doing this like 3 years ago.
Yeah. And don't forget to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of when I read that, that's what comes to mind.
Nice. And then I have build relationships off trust and care, which is a huge one. You've already mentioned it and you've seen it. It stands out a lot. It's crazy to think just getting to know people, building relationships, how different you are as a leader and how much more you stand out when you would just want everybody to act like this.
That's right.
But it's not always done. And like I've said, to solve a lot of our problems, if we just had the relationships with those people, a lot can get taken care of.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. It's amazing what you can achieve through relationships and being a decent human being.
Crazy. I hate how easy it is to say, but it's so hard for some people to do.
Yep.
Because now that I have shifted my mindset to that area of my life, like, dude, just get to know the person first. No matter their rank, who they are, what they do, where they live, just get to know them. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with it because it takes longer to get the task done than not getting to know them and telling them to get it done. So there's that time aspect where, like, I've heard a lot of officers be like, well, I don't have the time to get to know Airman, Weston when he was an airman, like doing the job, checking my jet. I had to go fly, do this. But if you take those times early, get to know the person, then there's probably going to be times where there's a problem on the jet and you're going to fix it really quick before they even recognize it. And then that's built off relationships and trust. I think I've been on both ends where I can see going out to a jet, the relationship is not there. So the crew chief and the maintenance people are just like, cool, they'll just plug in. Yep, here's your jet, cool, and then it's just like you're working through longer problems, trying to get some info. Instead of those times where I'm like, I walk out to jet, I know the guy because I see him in the gym all the time, and there's one guy on the B1 I specifically know he's got a good afro, he's always at the gym working out, swole, he's got a mustache. Every time I see him, I'm like, dude, what's up, man? You go to the gym, he's like, yeah. Then we go on a jet, and it's like, dude, the juice is already flowing, man. Like, he's telling me some things I might not have known about the jet. I'm giving him more data on what we're doing, and it just not from there.
And it just goes from there, and it just spiderwebs out, and it's awesome. Yeah.
What about the uncomfortable one? What have you seen? What do you think? Have you done any? Yeah. What do you got?
Yeah. So this is something I've kind of focused on in the past few months, actually. Initially, when I started college, I was doing just college, my 1 week in a month, and that's it. And slowly, as I've gone through the past 2 years, I started adding things to make myself more uncomfortable. So initially, I started flight training, so that took out a lot of my time. So I was in college, ROTC, my 1 week a month, and flight training. And then I decided to, a few months ago, I decided to try to be a full-time reservist. So I'm a traditional reservist on active duty order, so I work Monday through Friday and 1 week in a month, 16 credit hours of college, flight training, and ROTC now. And I'm very uncomfortable. I'm studying for the TBAS, the last test I have to take. I'm going to take it next week, and fingers crossed it goes well. So all those things added up just makes me more uncomfortable. And and there's certain things that work. I think I'm going to be the new DCC on another jet as a traditional reservist, which is wild. So I'm kind of pushing my limits right now. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, how much can I do? Because I really realize that with prioritization, time management, you can do so much in a day. You can do so much. It's mind blowing. So, and I'm super uncomfortable. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, and I don't get to bed till 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I try to get 7-8 hours of sleep, but I'm busy consistently throughout the whole day. I don't sit down. I don't watch TV. I don't drink. But you sacrifice things for. It's crazy. It's amazing.
Well, you don't drink and you're in the military? Come on, dude. Everybody drinks and you're in the military. Like
I know. I know. Yeah, I gave that up, and I've been trying to focus on eating at home and eating better, and going a little harder in the gym, or just going to the gym at all when I don't feel like it. That's a big one for me. I struggle with gym motivation. That's probably one of my biggest.
Okay.
Because I get home from work and I'm just so tired. Sometimes that's what you need to go get a pump. Go get after it. But very uncomfortable, and I'm starting to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. So always have an assignment due, always have somebody needing something, always got going to fly and make a flight plan from my pilot license or whatever it may be, and that's not very comfortable.
Yeah, that's when I felt the most comfortable in my life, when I was uncomfortable with a crazy busy schedule. So when I was in college, my best GPA out of my 4 years was my busiest year. Was the year I had classes stacked up, doing football, doing ROTC, working a part-time job, and a reservist, and trying to be married at the same time. I say trying to be married because my wife and I never saw each other. She worked nights as a shopco LP. I was obviously waking up butt crack on to go to football workouts, go to school, go to the gym, go to practice, do my homework, which was very minimal, come back home, make dinner. She'd go to work. I'd be like, good night, bye.
Yep.
But I look back at my GPA, and that was my most effective year. And I tell a lot of people, like, that's an effective way to work, is when you don't have time to slack off.
Yeah.
I was worst, my GPA, the year I had a lot of time on my hands because I took advantage of it. And so, I try to maintain that now, with like a very strict morning routine that doesn't allow me any slack. My evenings are always just tough as a parent, with kids and sports. But like you said, when you're uncomfortable, you handcuff yourself to have to execute. That's the huge thing. You have to execute. You have to make the time, and there's a lot of time in the day. Everybody will usually ask me once they get to know me or see me on social media, like, dude, how do you do like this? I'm like, there's a lot of time. I still have a lot of downtime in my day. Like, I could be more productive. Obviously, that's why I jumped into the podcast. I could squeeze that in there, like doing little things like that. And it's pretty crazy.
It is. But it's cool. It's so once you kind of realize that, it's amazing. It's amazing after you look back how much time you wasted before.
I hate looking back at how much time I've wasted.
Yeah. I look back on the last 4 or 5 years. I wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, I look back at, granted, like when I was an airman, it's not that I wasted time. I didn't have anything productive to put use to that time. So like,
true too.
When I came back from teaching in the woods or going from work, dude, like in our dorm at Fairchild, we had our floor of all SEER guys. We had an Ethernet cord going to 4 rooms because back then you could only play Halo through the Ethernet cord. We all had our 4 little TVs, and a TV in each room with 4 players set up. So we had 16 people going. We had pizza in all the rooms. We had alcohol going all around.
Oh my goodness!
You'd literally come home back. You'd literally give this like loud knock, like everybody log in 10 minutes. Like we're gonna go play, and you just sit there and just like game for like hours.
That's awesome. But that's really cool though too, because you're still building. Yeah. You're still building morale, and you're getting to know your team guys a little bit better. And that's awesome.
So it's funny, yeah. But all right, let's talk about some leadership traits that you saw in there that you're like, oh, cool, I'll steal that, because you've already hit what I love about leadership. It's borrowing and stealing, man. Like all those traits you see on my thing, I did not come up with those. I didn't just sit down and go, I literally was just like, same thing you do. Oh, I like how this guy does this. I'm going to write it in there and I can use that one when I need to. Or, oh, I don't like that one, but I'm going to write it down for one that, it's in there. So what do you got?
Yes, 100%. So failing, that's huge. So like, I don't think I ever told you this, but I didn't fail the AFOQT, but I took it 3 times to get the scores I wanted.
Oh, nice.
I
I
took it once,
failed
took it
it.
twice.
So.
Yeah, I got a waiver and I studied again.
Oh,
and I got a
wow,
waiver
cool.
and I took it a 3rd time to finally get the scores I want to be competitive. So I count those first 2 as failures because and I didn't fail it. I passed it as a whole.
I like how you used that where you didn't have to take it if you didn't want to, but you knew like, hey, I can take. Most people probably don't even realize they can take it again to get a better score.
Yeah,
they're probably just like, I just have to take the AFQT once. That's the score I get. But like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I had to get a waiver to take it a 3rd time, and thankfully that time yielded me the scores that I wanted. Finally maxed it out. And then with the same thing with the TBAS, I took the TBAS already once, but they take the most recent score with the TBAS, and it's not super score. They don't take your best, so I'm risking a reward versus risk of failing or doing worse and hurting my scores for my board. But if failure stops you from pursuing something, the fear of failure, you probably won't get it either way. So I'm trying to fight that fear of failure. I'm prepping for it. Should be next week when I'm taking it, and staying positive, and we're gonna do better. And also, failing is when we learn the most. It humbles us.
Yeah.
If everything always goes right, you don't learn very much. Mm-hmm. So I learn the most when I fail. So that's a big one. I highlighted it out of the list. Do you want me to keep going?
We'll do one more, and then I'll have you hit on the prioritize and execute a little bit more. So
okay, cool. All right. Let's do. Man, there's so many. I want to cover so many of them. So.
We'll do another one where we just cover leadership traits. So
yeah, cool. Okay. I'm gonna do have a why. I think that's out of all of them. There's so many, but I first heard this from my commander in ROTC.
Oh, nice.
Very first orientation, he talked about this, and it makes so much sense. And I try to apply it to my job in the reserves and to my job, as a flight commander in our ROTC and stuff. So, I remember so many times when I was a young airman, I would be told to do something. I didn't understand why it made me not want to do it. I didn't have that same motivation and drive to go get it done. Once I started realizing, once he said, have that why, find your why. Your why, not only for yourself, find your own why is, gives you a motivation and dedication and discipline, helps you get to where you want to be, but also giving other people a why and explaining why they need to be doing something. Hey, I understand that this doesn't make sense to do this certain job, but this is why we're doing it. This is the result. This is what it plays into the mission. And if this doesn't get done, we can't go drop these bombs over here. And explain to them why we're doing, even if they seem like the smallest, minimal tasks. Giving a good why is huge. So that's probably the other one.
I like how you added. It's not just them giving you why, but you need to sort of find that why as well.
Yeah.
There are so many times where I hear squadron commanders or OG commanders always be like, tell your airmen why they're doing it so they do the job. But now, listening to you, like, I should be questioning the airmen, like, you need to find a why as well. It's a two-way street, right? You've already mentioned this. Like, man, so many times the leadership thinks they need to express an important why for everybody to do the job, when in reality, I should almost be looking at them going, you should have a why you're doing this job too.
Yes.
You're doing this job to save my ass. Like, like that should be your why. You're checking my gear because if I have to use it in this time of the situation, it doesn't work, it's your fault. Like, that's your why.
Yep. And not just, I'm going to get in trouble if I mess up.
Yeah. And sometimes those whys you like, and I like how you're emphasizing they need to find it because it's going to make them dig deep.
Yes.
Them appreciate it a little bit more than me going, hey, your why today is to help us drop bombs. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
80% of the airmen don't, or that is not an important why to them.
Right.
A good one, but it's not the one that's going to give them goosebumps of why they're doing the job.
Exactly.
That's good. Yeah. I almost just want to add, like, Like, like you have to be direct and they have to have a why.
Yes. Yeah. I think everybody needs to have a why, especially if you want to be successful. A lot of people are okay with just but some people are okay with just doing what they want to, doing what they're told, being a workhorse and just doing the job. And that's great. They have their own maybe internal motivation or whatever, but I still think that people need a why. Why do you, I mean, why do you wake up every morning and go to work? Like, what drives you? What motivates you? And I've been times in my life where I didn't have a purpose, and that kind of goes into the purpose side of things. Having a why and having a purpose are very similar.
Yeah.
And without a purpose, what do we have? What drives us? Because motivation only lasts for so long. You can get little short spurts of motivation all the time, all day long. I'll be motivated for a week to work out, but if I have a why and a purpose of like, I need to work out because of this, or I need to keep my GPA up so I can commission and get the job I want. Not just a little bit motivation to do well on one assignment or get one workout in because you heard a song that or a leadership video that hyped you up. You have to find that discipline. Even when you don't want to do it, you still do it because you have that why in the grand scheme of things. If that makes any sense. I don't know.
No, it makes tons of sense. That was good. All right, prioritize and execute. Where'd you hear it? What do you got with it? How do I implement it? If I'm new hearing this, how
so prioritize and execute is something I preach constantly. A lot of it's with time management, but it can go, which is also a leadership perspective, right? You got to have the leadership skill. You always have to have time management. But I don't know if I probably heard it from a Jocko podcast, I would assume, but I use it constantly. So like every single week every day I have a list of things that I prioritize out every day, and I have to get those things done and I execute them. So I do the most important thing, or the thing that's due the first, or the most critical thing to do, and I execute, and then I do one after the other. So I take a look at the overall picture, like an outside perspective of everything that's going on in my life, and having an outside perspective is super important. And then diving in and prioritizing those aspects, and then after you prioritize them, execute them and make them happen. And if you want to get somewhere, get something done, and go somewhere with your life, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I like how you emphasize not just like what I loved is, and I need to up my game now, is I have a list, but I don't do a good job prioritizing which ones I need to do first to make that, to make it executable. Like there's a list of tasks I may have to do, and I'll just jot them all down as I think of them, but I'm not taking the time to go, okay, here's my list now. Which ones should I start focusing on now that are going to take the most brain bites? Or do I want to do some simple wins really quick to get them out of the way and then focus on those? I'm sort of just going down the list as I wrote it, which isn't the best way because I didn't write it as I was prioritizing it.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to emphasize the prioritize part. It's not just a list that you're executing.
Right.
The list is intentful. It's thoughtful. Yep. It's in an order to help you win.
Yes.
Because a lot of people can probably do a list, but they're not going to win. Because maybe the list wasn't done correctly, or you did something that took way too long to do,
and then you can't do the other thing. Yeah. You have to. Yeah, I break it down by day and by time of the day, or typically just by day, and when something's due, or when I have to have something due by, or this is super important, so it's going to take a couple days to knock out, so I need to start on it today and work on it throughout the next 2 days so I can have it done. So I'm not rushing it the last day, and then. I just do that every single weekend, usually Saturdays or Sundays. I do that for every single week, what I have to do for the week. And I add it on throughout the week. If something pops up, I'll move stuff around and kind of make it work.
I love that. That's nice. Man, that gave me goosebumps again. Obviously execute is just a great word. It's not just like go do, right? Like execute has intent behind it,
Yes.
It's very Jocko-ish, very just like when you say the word execute, like you just want to crush things, man. Like it's not like I'm just saying like, here's my list, go do this item. Okay. Yeah. Execute. Oh shit, I just execute. I gotta go do it.
I gotta get after it. Go. Yeah.
I'll add that one for sure. That's good. I like it.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites.
That's cool. All right. Let's give everybody a couple books to as we wrap up here. We just hit the hour, which is perfect. Even though our juices are flowing, we can keep going. But we can always do this again, which is perfect.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Anytime.
what book do you got for everybody today?
I got Jocko, Extreme Ownership.
Book, yeah.
I don't know if somebody's brought this on the podcast yet, but
Nope, nobody has. Nope.
I put bookmarks in it where there's little quotes or leadership aspects that he talks about that I can look back on, kind of a leadership Bible. But being a leader, you have to exercise extreme ownership, and he talks about that with different stories.
Extreme ownership's hard to do. It's hard to do.
It's so hard. So this is probably the best book I've ever read. I'm just getting into leadership type books. After I've seen you do it and seen different books that you've advertised and kind of let people know. So this is the one that I've started with, and I'm doing pretty good with it. Read it before I go to bed every night. Instead of being on my phone every night, I'll put my phone down an hour before bed and I'll read.
Perfect. I love it. The book I'll probably start tomorrow. I have to finish my other book, but it's just Arnold's book, Total Recall. The way I got this book is I listen to a podcast called Founders, which is a really cool podcast. It's a guy that just does podcast episodes on books. So like biographies, autobiographies, he just recaps them in like an hour.
Interesting.
Super cool. The book he did on Arnold was the Total Recall book. It's a condensed version of Arnold, even though it's like 650 pages. It's still a condensed version on Arnold's life. I think Arnold's written 3 books so far, but I love how you brought your book, because I tell a lot of people on every podcast, there's 2 types of books I read. Tactical, executional books. Jocko's Extreme Ownership, perfect example. You can take notes, you can add it to your life, you can execute. Yep. Then I love to read, I'm starting to shift into this like old man mentality of like World War II books, historical autobiographies. Oh, yeah. And I just got done reading a concise on Napoleon, which was really cool. I'm just reading About Face by Dave Hackworth, an Army general or colonel. Now I'm jumping into, so I like to read personal story books where I'm hearing more up front of what these, and I know Extreme Ownership, Jocko does reference a lot of his stories and stuff too, but it's a little bit more tactics.
It is, yes.
Yeah. But I also love reading books on people's life because I can obviously see how they apply it in real world. And I've watched Arnold's documentary on Netflix. It's phenomenal. I'm listening to another one of his books on my podcast in my car. I think it's like 7 Habits to Success, another book he's done. But his lifestyle is insane. But yeah, so Total Recall by Arnold, Extreme Ownership by Jocko. I'll drop them in the notes as well for people if you just want a direct link. Yeah. Yeah. What last puts or anything do you have for anybody out there that's listening or wanting to start their journey? Or what do you got?
For anyone who has a dream, don't let it just be a dream. Go chase it. Put in the work. So far, it's been worth it. And I'm bad at like I'm not as good as you are with this stuff, but I'm trying. You'd be amazed what you can do if you put your mind to something. And then don't give up. Just maintain. Just keep going. Keep pushing, and good things happen. That's all I got.
I love it, man. Thank you very much. I took tons of notes. I look forward to your journey, man. I think it's gonna be really good.
I hope so too, and I appreciate it. We'll stay in touch. I'll keep staying up with the podcast. You're gonna gain more and more traction. Keep doing what you're doing. You were an instrumental part in my journey, among others. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you. I kind of look up to you. You're the kind of officer I want to be. Not only having a leadership mindset, but also, setting that example and being that down to earth, but also energetic. You get, that kind of both sides.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
it's difficult, but you do it well from what I can see. And I hope that we can get together sometime and get a ruck in and talk in person. That'd be awesome.
For sure. If anybody wants to reach out to you, just ask you any questions, what's the easiest, I guess, form of social media you want me to put in the show?
They can follow my probably my Instagram or my email. They can shoot me an email.
Okay. Easy.
I think my Instagram is private, but
as long as they reach out and
if they request to chat or whatever. Yeah, anybody. I mean, I'd love people to reach out. I'd love to be able, if I can help people like you help me, that'd be awesome. So
that's the goal. That's the goal, man.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Weston, man, thanks for jumping on. Like I said, everybody, if you didn't take anything, I don't know what you were listening to the past hour because I took tons. And so I challenge everybody who's listening to share what they learned today. Save it, follow it, like it, do what you got to do. Share with somebody who means something in your career that you want to take the next step because this episode will definitely help. All right, y'all. Until next episode, thank you. Tim, you have a wonderful day. Go crush it.
Thanks. See ya.